We have a quorum. This is the appointed time. Let's invite the administration in immediately, and we will call to order this meeting.
大家會議正式開始。
Now I've called to order the meeting, and feel free to choose.
咁同時請官員入嚟啦。
Please invite the administration in.
呢度都講人工島。唉，清一色公務員今日。
Good morning. We have representatives from the Hong Kong Airport Authority and the Civil Service. And I'm sorry to say that our meeting has clashed with another one. So we may not have so many members here at any time of this meeting. But but on the contrary, we may discuss in greater detail if there aren't many members here. And we have this seating plan, so I won't go through the government officials one by one. You can just check the seating plan to find out the names. In short, we have a team of government officials and from various departments, from EPD, AFCD, and the Highways Department, and CDD, and also the Airport Authority Hong Kong, and also the Office of Communications Authority. So we have 7 to 8 departments involved, but I'm not quite sure why we have a representative from the OCA or OFCA. So the paper is CB-11648/1314-01. Mr. Au, please walk us through the paper. Perhaps you can take a bit more time to tell us more details about this paper, because it contains quite a lot of information. Mr. Au, thank you for giving us this opportunity to attend this meeting. This paper seeks to address the various issues raised by members on marine ecology and the important species. So I'll walk you through the paper, which is quite complex. Now, the administration attaches great importance to protecting marine ecology. There are policy objectives. There are mitigation measures to minimize impact on marine ecology, and also our marine policy. In fact, starting from 2004, the government implemented the NNCP, the New Nature Conservation Policy. The objective of the policy is to take into account social and economic considerations, regulate, protect, and manage natural resources that are important for the conservation of biodiversity of Hong Kong in a sustainable manner for the benefit and enjoyment of the present and future generations of community. And since 2004, we have rolled out a number of initiatives as set out in the paper. The purpose is to set up a comprehensive management system. And as far as the ecology is concerned, we step up monitoring of the natural resources and the ecology. As for activities and projects that may impose an impact on the environment, we have a stringent mechanism in assessing and minimizing the impact. And fourthly, we try to protect the ecology which may be affected. And fifthly, we step up public education and raise public's awareness. And we have done quite a lot on these 5 fronts. And perhaps we can go into further details later on. And also under this new policy, we have new initiatives to protect important sites with important ecological value. And we have implemented the management agreements, MAs. And at the policy level, in 2013, the government has embarked on an exercise to develop a city-level BSAP about the diversity strategy and action plan. And the work commenced in 2013, and it will be completed by the end of 2015. Apart from government policies, the administration also has a comprehensive mechanism to control and minimize the impact of construction works on the ecology. There are several pieces of important legislation set out, including the EIA Ordinance, the Environmental Impact Assessment Ordinance, Foreshore and Seabed Reclamations Ordinance, Dumping at Sea Ordinance, Water Pollution Control Ordinance, Merchant Shipping Local Vessels Ordinance. These ordinances are within the regulatory framework, which play an important role in minimizing impact on marine ecology. And we also have an administrative mechanism on giving ex gratia allowances for fishermen and culturalists affected. And over the past decade, the government has implemented a number of projects. The first one is concerned with the Chinese white dolphins. Starting in 2001, we rolled out a conservation program for the Chinese white dolphin, and we monitored the abundance of dolphins for a number of years already. The data is available online, and we also try to enhance natural resources. For example, trawling ban has been introduced, and it took effect on the 31st of December 2012, which help enhancing the environment. Since Chinese white dolphin population is found in various areas, we also work with the Guangdong administration in conserving the Chinese white dolphin. Concerning important species in Maipo or Fengyun, butterflies, or Long Valley, we have the management agreement scheme in place. There are 3 management agreement schemes, including one in Fengyun and Long Valley, and also one other site. These, under the MA schemes, at these sites, the NGOs, the landowners, and the fishermen and mariculturalists renting the place collaborate to protect the natural environment and enhance the biodiversity. And again, this is set out in the paper. On ongoing construction works, in fact, we also have a protection of wetland project in Lok Ma Chau under the Spur Line project. And all these examples shows the work done by the government in protecting the ecology. Some members are a member asked why we have sent an Oscar representative to today's meeting. Back then, several years ago, in a discussion, there were concerns over the underwater projects like the laying of cables, laying of submarine cables, and dredging. And there were questions on how the impact on the environment could be minimized, and that's why we have invited this department as well. Now, there are works on 3 fronts. whether or not it is within the EIA ordinance, regardless of the size of the project, suitable studies should be conducted. At the stage of planning, say for alignment and design, the first principle is avoidance, to avoid affecting the environment as much as possible. And also the impact should be minimized, and also if impact is inevitable, there should be a compensation mechanism. There are various ways under this mechanism. For example, the EIA, environmental impact assessment, and as said in the paper, there is a 3-runway system project, so on and so forth, and the project proponents can elaborate on these projects later on. We have a stringent mechanism with high degree of transparency. For minor works like village development or new town extension and laying of submarine cables, in the process of gazetting the projects, the project proponent must have completed or minimized or implemented mitigation measures.
Apart from these policies and measures for specific projects, Hong Kong has a rather complete system to monitor marine ecology. And these monitoring efforts are very important in preserving the environment. And the AFCD and the relevant departments are working on the monitoring from in different areas. And we monitored the state of the coral reefs, and the relevant figures would be published. And the departments can address, are willing to address the needs of the questions of members. Do other departments have any figures to share with us? If not, I'll open the floor to the members for questions. We have 5 members who would like to ask questions. We only have a single item for the meeting today. And I'd like to share the how we discuss things at the Legislative Council in the good old days. We had a lot of time in the past, and we had a lot of meaningful conversations with the administration. So I won't set a time limit, but please behave yourselves. If you are being repetitive, I would stop you. So first, calling Hon Kenneth LEUNG. Dennis Kwok, please. First, I would like to know the assessment criteria for EIAO, especially the part on marine ecology. For the marine ecological assessment, I see it's already covered in the environmental impact assessment for some projects. But for the TM, under Annex 17, there is a part on fisheries impact assessment, and in Annex 16, ecological assessment was mentioned. For Annex 16 and 17, not a lot has been said on marine conservation. When the consultants conduct EIAs, when they conduct marine assessments, what are the criteria used by the consultants? Under the current TM, do we have enough guidelines or support for the consultants in order to conduct a comprehensive assessment? Perhaps I'll try to answer this question, and then I will invite the FCD to add more. Under the existing system, Hong Kong has a rather complete technical memorandum, And some of the annexes are relevant to this part, including 16 and 17, among others. And these are rather reliable and complete guidelines. And we also have administrative guidelines, and the proponents can refer to these guidelines online. Perhaps I would invite the AFCD to add more on the assessment criteria. Mr. Shum. For the technical memorandum, it's a rather it's rather like an overview on what proponents have to take note of. When conducting the EIAs, the proponents must come up with a study brief for their projects. And the specific requirements of the projects and the specific work must be laid out. For example, if the project takes place in Lantau Island, and perhaps it would affect the population of Chinese white dolphins, and under the project brief, the possible impacts to the possible cumulative impacts to Chinese white dolphins or the potential impacts must be included in the brief. And the EPD's approval is required. Do all current project briefs include marine ecological assessment? Mr. Sham, basically yes. In the future, we are to build an incinerator, assuming that it's approved. What other additional measures in terms of marine conservation would you adopt? On the incinerator issue, in the last few years, we have conducted a pretty complete EIA, including site visits, and we have assessed the impacts of such projects on different marine species. In terms of design, we have tried to minimize the impacts to the ocean, and we have minimized the marine area involved, and the amounts of excavation has also been minimized. And during the construction phase, we would introduce measures like introducing a new buffer zone, and we would also monitor the ecology of porpoises, and we would impose limits on the vessel sailing speeds. And in the EIA, outside SOCO, we would introduce a marine park to minimize the impacts on marine species. In the middle ocean bodies or Lantau Island, we have incinerators, we have the third runway, we have the artificial island, the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macao Bridge. So according to the government, how many projects do you expect in the same period? In the past, we were told by the government that such projects might be able to might be shifted temporarily. I'll try to respond to this question. in Hong Kong, all such projects involving EIA, we must consider the accumulative impacts of such projects. For confirmed projects, we would see if any other projects would occur simultaneously at the same marine areas. So we would consider the impacts of other projects so as to avoid the cumulative impacts of such projects. Does the CEDD have anything to add on the projects at Lantau Island? Mr. Yip. The CEDD understands the concerns of the public and green groups on the projects in Lantau Island. And in August to September last year, we looked at Lung Ku, Sunny Bay, and Siu Ho Wan in the western water bodies. We conducted a cumulative EIA at these sites. And through site surveys for the dolphins as well as the cumulative EIA, we hope to address possible impacts in different areas, including impacts to fisheries, marine ecology, air quality, and so on. Hopefully, by the end of this year, we can complete the relevant analyses and come up with the reports. Thank you very much. Members, please be reminded that usually when the government comes to LegCo asking for approval, they are only trying to obtain approval, but we have to monitor the progress of the reports. Elizabeth Quad, please. I've had a chat with green groups who are concerned with the water bodies. In terms of underwater study, coastline study, in terms of these areas, Hong Kong doesn't seem to have a holistic policy, and we are looking at it from with a piecemeal approach. We are looking at different projects piece by piece. In terms of overall marine development, we don't see a holistic view or direction. And what is the government's overall policy on this? The overall policy of the government is that in 2004, we announced a new policy, and the main focus was on enhancing biodiversity and conservation. The first objective was to monitor the overall situation or changes in the environment. In 2002, the government began monitoring works on marine ecology, and since 2004, our emphasis has been to focus on important species. We highlighted 6 specific species, including the Chinese white dolphin, and the monitoring works began in 2000 for the dolphins. And in Deep Bay and other sites for sites of higher priority, we set up an overall policy. And this is what we did for important species and their ecology. And in terms of public education and awareness, we also stepped up promotion efforts for marine parks. In the last 10 years, the AFCD and other departments have done a lot on public education. And for the public works, we enhance efforts on cumulative EIAs. And going forward, as we mentioned in the papers already, under the Convention on Biodiversity under BSAP, we also have other measures in place. And the global and local trends dictate that in terms of biodiversity, we have to address both terrestrial and marine ecology. And we have also covered marine ecology and marine resources. And under the convention, there are 20 specific indicators which we have to fulfill. And we began our works in 2013.
And we set up a steering committee chaired by a non-government official with 3 task forces and various focus groups and experts and scholars from academia, and all collaborated in implementing the BSAP, and this can set the way forward for us. I don't know if the AFCD would like to supplement the overall strategy in monitoring and protection of marine resources. Mr. Ao just now gave an overview of the government's policy in this area, in particular the BSAP. BSAP is more a plan at the macro level, but let me brief you on our work on marine conservation. We place focuses on protecting important species like the white Chinese dolphin, on corals. Starting from the year 2000, every year we work with the international organization, a coral survey fund, and we conducted a coral reef survey at various locations in Hong Kong to monitor the growth of coral reefs or corals in Hong Kong. And sea turtle is also in existence in Hong Kong. And according to CAP 170, Protection of Wild Animals Ordinance, and also Protection of Endangered Species and of Animals and Plants Ordinance CAP 586, we visited various sites like the Deepwater Bay, where sea turtles are found. And apart from that, we also extend our protection from protecting the species to protecting the habitat of these species. And this is done through the EIA, conducting EIAs. And we also rehabilitate the affected areas by implementing or planting up agricultural or artificial corals. And also we have conducted publicity and education campaigns, school visits, etc., or outreach activities. We understand that we need to work closely with our neighboring places to protect the ecology, and we work collaboratively with the Guangdong administration. We have set up a group for this purpose, and we liaise with our counterpart in Guangdong to look at the artificial reef for coral reef restoration, and also cooperation on various fronts. Well, Madam Chair, then can we say that in terms of the whole marine ecology in Hong Kong, for example, the species, the types of corals in the waters of Hong Kong and their ecological behavior, can we have a understanding on that? Starting from the year 2000, we have been conducting annual surveys. All the statistics are available on the FCD's website, and we also make public all survey reports. Of course, the ecological data should continuously be updated, and we therefore will continue to do this work in this regard in the future. And yes, this also gives us an understanding of the ecology. Have you been questioned as far as the accuracy of the data is concerned? Say there are green groups which say that at sites of reclamation there are seahorses, but you say otherwise. Well, maybe I will defer to the AFCD to supplement. Now, on the ecology, it's not something that is static. Of course, we have some data, but of course, the system evolves, and under the various impacts, there may be changes to the ecology. That's why we need to have regular monitoring. Say, seahorses, as mentioned just now, in fact, is a type of fish. In fact, seahorses are found in quite a lot of places in Hong Kong. If you conduct an extensive survey, you can have more detailed information on more locations. But in fact, we do have some understanding on specific species like corals and seahorses and cetaceans. So what about the third runway project? The WWF said that six important fish species are found, but it seems that they're not included in your EIA report. So can you tell us why your stance differs from the WWF's stance? I think you're referring to the several species of fish mentioned by the WWF in yesterday's article. And as I understand from my colleagues, it seems that these 6 species are mentioned in the EIA report. So I don't think this is true. Perhaps I can defer to my colleagues responsible for the EIA. Mr. Tang? As said in the paper, regarding the third runway system project, the EIA is now being subject to public inspection. Of course, different groups and different members of the public will be submitting their comments during this public inspection period. The comments will be forwarded to the Environmental Protection Department, and then based on these views and comments, the EPD will inquire with the AFCD on matters of concern, and after that, the views would be forwarded to the advisory committee for further discussion. So perhaps at this stage there are different voices. It's understandable, but the EIA of the 3 one-way system project is still being processed at the moment. I don't think it's appropriate for us to go into an in-depth discussion because it's still being subject to public inspection at the moment. Of course, we're not here to discuss the details of the EIA report for the 3RS project. Very often the government CIA report will be subject to challenge. So take the third runway system project as an example. How much or how well do you understand the species? Whether you have minimize and compensate the ecological impacts, etc. And having done all these, there are green groups which suggest that your assessment into the environmental and ecological impact under the water is still not sufficient. My question is, what have you done to ensure or to prevent your EIA report from being challenged? Now, on this general question, Madam Chair, may I take this question? The EIA is in itself a scientific study. It's conducted by experts using established methods in collecting data. And the AFCD also has its own experts and professionals and scientific evidence to analyze the data collected. So the AFCD plays a very important role because it analyzes the data from a professional perspective. Thirdly, we have the public inspection system. We allow the public to give comments, and then the AFCD will then analyze the views based on the data and scientific evidence. It's a matter of analysis. Now, before I invite another member to speak, Mr. Albert Chan would like to ask his question first, as his meeting has clashed with another one. So I have to ask members lining up before him whether they agree. 3 members in front of him, Mr. Christopher Chung, Charles Mok, and Dr. Kenneth Leung. Mr. Christopher Chung is the first one to go ahead. So if he disagrees, I'll have to let him go first. What about the remaining 2? Well, how can you restrict anyone from speaking? Well, Madam Chair, in fact, I still have time. I want to ask a question on education. Now, let's wait for a second round. Since we have so many government officials here, many of them from professional grades, I'm not going to impose a limit of, say, 3 minutes or 4 minutes. I won't just let you ask your question and have no time for it to be answered. I want to have a dialogue. That's why I'm not imposing any speaking time limit. However, I think that there should be a limit, and I think that the question has been thoroughly answered. I will ask you to wait for the second round. Madam Chair, I'm not very happy. Why not happy? Not happy with me or what? I don't know whether you have invited the director or deputy director or not. We only have the assistant director here. I don't know whether he is very familiar with everything. Mr. Christopher Chung, every time we invite the administration to attend the meeting, and it's up to them to decide who to send. I don't think it is enough because there are several deputy directors under AFCD now on marine. In fact, Mr. Sham is only responsible for marine parks, all right, country parks as well. So let's ask your question first and see if you're happy with the answer. You're right, but first of all, I'm not happy that not enough government officials have come. Now the question is this. Not many are familiar with marine ecology, and I'm not happy because all along you talked about monitoring the species. What about the people? There are so many people who rely on fisheries and mariculture. Have you asked what will happen to their livelihood? Just now the member asked a question, but you did not answer it. After the Rose Garden scheme in back then, there were a lot of dredging and dumping at sea, and the marine ecology was heavily affected. Have you assessed the impact? Mr. Sham was responsible for fisheries back then. He said that in 3 to 5 years' time, the environment could be restored. 20 years have passed. Has the environment been restored? I think Mr. Sham has to take this question. his boss is not here. The one responsible for fisheries is not here, and he meddled with fisheries before. So can you tell me whether you have conducted any survey on fishermen and mariculturalists and see whether the environment has indeed been restored? Hong Kong waters occupied a large portion of the area of Hong Kong, at least half. Now the problem differs from the problems at land because people see these problems. Even if you fell a tree, you will receive complaints, but not so much for damage to the sea. In fact, there is not a sufficient fill at the moment, and therefore dredging is needed. And dredging will in fact cause even a greater impact on the already damaged marine ecology. So you're going to deal another blow to the marine ecology. So should you first assess whether there is sufficient fill for the projects? And you only talk about the impact on the project sites for respective projects. What about the excavation or dredging sites?
And dumping is the second question. Dumping is very serious in Hong Kong, and it's really prevalent. And you are right now we are dumping different types of materials at various sites. Is this really does this really contribute towards marine conservation? And in the course of dredging, did you pay attention to the different types of soil in different seasons? You are not monitoring private dumping companies. They don't care about the type of construction material, and you are only monitoring the locations of the private dumping companies, but you're not paying attention to other things, and this situation is not satisfactory. And back then you promised fishermen that you would introduce different measures like nets, like very big nets, or other measures to mitigate the filling. I think you should practice restraint and try to handle these construction materials in another way. For example, burying them at another site. As I mentioned, we have a lot of projects right now. Have you studied the impacts between the different construction projects? Right now, you are not assessing the impacts towards other sites, and including sites which are not directly involved in the projects. So I think the existing EIA reports are incomplete. Next, on the ex gratia allowance, you are still adopting the calculation methods from 1990, and this is unfair to a lot of fishermen. So can the AFCD conduct a review at an appropriate time on the mechanism of the EGA? And in Leung or Tonglong Island, if we are to perform dredging. And the fishermen in Shaoke-Wan wouldn't receive any compensation, even though it's very close to Lei Yu Mun. And this is unfair if some fishermen can receive compensation and others cannot. So this is an unreasonable policy, and it's very unfair to fishermen. 3 questions. Mr. Au, please. For the first question, I'll ask Mr. Sham to respond. And for the second question on dredging, we need scientific EIAs before we can draw up the mitigation measures. And on the cumulative impacts under the existing mechanism, we do have to conduct cumulative EIA studies. And these studies would address the possible impacts to other sites. For the third question, on the issue of dumping, I would invite Mr. Wong to talk about the existing controls Hong Kong has in place. And perhaps Mr. Sham can respond on the fisheries question. In response to Mr. Chung's question, even though I'm not in charge of the fisheries, he mentioned the issues of large-scale dredging and dumping. I think he was referring to projects more than 10 years ago, for example, the Chek Lap Kok Airport. And perhaps the relevant officials in charge of the public works can respond to the dredging issue. And they can also address the issues on cumulative environmental impacts. Mr. Chung mentioned the 3 to 5 year ex gratia allowance scheme and on the calculation method from 8 or 9 years ago, and whether or not this is still reasonable today. The ex gratia allowance level has been increased to 11 years, and several rounds of amendments have been made, and it has been passed in the Finance Committee. As far as I understand, the figure 8 to 9 years ago, the figure was drawn up before considering the impacts to fishermen at that time. So at that time, they accepted this figure. So perhaps Luis can talk about the allowance scheme. The scheme applies to the mariculturalists and fishermen affected by the marine projects, and the government would help register these fishermen, and it was passed in April 2012 by the Finance Committee, and 2 EGA schemes were passed, and the compensation standards were enhanced, and for fishing grounds which are permanently affected by the projects, and these were decided after consulting the fishermen, and this is an overview of the ex gratia allowance scheme. I'm not just referring to the financial aspects of the EGA. For example, for Lei Yu Mun, some fishermen are compensated and some are not. Should you review the mechanism? So this was my first question. And for the second question, you mentioned for the Rose Garden project in 1992, you promised to restore the fishing grounds within 3 to 5 years. And what happened now? So I'm not saying that you haven't done anything, but have you restored the grounds to what they were 8 or 9 years ago? You have to address this issue. Ms. Lee, perhaps I would give more on our efforts to restore the fishery grounds. And 8 or 9 years ago, we came up with a comprehensive fishery resources report, and we found that Hong Kong's fishery resources are being affected. And we set up a commission to look at the fisheries issue, and we hope to promote the development of the fisheries trades, and we wanted to develop modern fisheries. And the government has followed up on the recommendations by the Commission, and in December 2012, we introduced a trawling ban. And we registered local vessels, fishing vessels, in order to limit trawling. And we are also setting up a protected areas for fisheries in order to facilitate cultivation. And through these measures, we are hoping to promote the local fisheries. And in the last few years, we have been conducting fishery resources studies, and apart from the trawling bans, we are trying to obtain additional figures in order to perform an analysis. And for fishermen, we conduct regular fishing port surveys. We would visit these ports and talk to the fishermen on the origins and impacts of their fishing efforts. And we conducted a review of the ex gratia allowance scheme in 2012. And this has been discussed in LegCo before. And the fishermen would tend to stay in their original fishing areas. So these are things we have done to look more into the fishery situation in Hong Kong. You haven't addressed Mr. Chung's question on the fairness of compensation to different fishermen. You're affecting fishermen who are working in the relevant areas. You have to review the mechanism of the EGA. Can you promise to conduct a review? When we interview the fishermen on where they go to work or where they catch their fish. So we do have an understanding on where the fishermen obtain their fish, and under the ex gratia allowance scheme, we conducted a review in 2012, and this has been mentioned in the LegCo papers. And at that time, the review results showed that this mechanism is fair. This is unreasonable. They want to interview the fishermen, and yet the government asked me to organize a session in Taiwan, and after more than half a year, the conclusion is that the fishermen in Taiwan weren't eligible for under the scheme. We mentioned some very specific problems, and at the end, the conclusion is that the fishermen have no comments. You have to be more proactive, and so you have to conduct a review of the EJ scheme. And you promise you promise to recover the fishing grounds within 3 to 5 years. And Mr. Sham, you were one of the people who made the promise. If you are unable to recover these grounds, you should say so. But yes, you are not even conducting any studies. I think the government has to follow up on the situation mentioned by Mr. Chung. And I think that the fishermen should complain. I am representing the fishermen in my district. So why don't you allow the government to answer this question? Mr. Chung, you have began at your question at 9:12 a.m. I've been looking at the clock. Mr. Chen asked me to filibuster for 5 more minutes. That's why I was only entertaining his request. For this case, let's invite the affected fishermen to bring their case to the government. Please, I'm talking. So I'd like to invite the fishermen to bring their case to the government, and we would meet the government again in future meetings, and the government should address the inadequacies of the existing scheme.
Mr. Albert Chan. Madam Chair, I think on the issue of fishermen's compensation, we have been arguing with the government for 20 years. Well, the infrastructure project started 20 years ago have brought along disasters, and they are not resolved yet. I'm talking about marine fill, dredging, and illegal dumping at sea, and the whole harbour has been polluted as a result. Not until fishermen complain that we realize the illegal dumping at sea by barges. And afterwards we install satellites, and then from Tung Chung to the north of the airport, we have implemented control against dumping of marine sediments. So that's the western part of Hong Kong. On the eastern part of Hong Kong, there is another problem, another ecological disaster due to dredging, along with reclamation projects for the airport, for the Northern Land Tower, etc. They have also brought another round of ecological disaster. So throughout 20 years, all the illegally dumped marine sludge continue to cause an obnoxious smell rising from the harbor. And I recently talked to some fishermen, and whenever they placed the nets into the waters for fishing, even the net would become smelly, and they would have to be discarded, even if no fish was catch. So look at the catastrophe created. Very rarely do I share a similar view with Mr. Christopher Chung. We both talk to fishermen. We understand their plight, then their suffering. And recently, the government has started taking back licenses from them. I think the AFCD is not helping the fisheries industry. They're helping the government to stifle the industry. The same with pigsties. In order to modernize pig farming, something has been done. And since the new director has assumed office, I think this new director has not done anything to promote the development of the industry. After this director has assumed office, he hasn't said anything in the public about helping the fisheries industry. So this director is really lame. I hope something can be done to help the fisheries industry and fishermen. They have faced so many disasters throughout the 20 years, and a new round of disasters coming. CY Leung is so ignorant in this regard, and he is proposing to build an artificial island in the central waters, and also the new town extension in Tung Chung, and also a new incinerator killing the Finnish porpoise habitat. Every 20 years, there is a new disaster. I hope the AFCD can talk to the administration to formulate a comprehensive policy for the fisheries industry. For example, nearshore fishing. You've taken all the licenses and you talked about fishing grounds, and the natural fishing ground is in fact Penny's Bay, and now it's gone. So the question is, what can be done to help restore the development of the fisheries industry? Of course, every year the government dumps tens of thousands of or millions of tons of lead into the sea. What about fishing nets? Across the world, there are requirements on the eyelets of or the gap of the nets, but there is no such requirement in Hong Kong. Even small fish and fries can be caught. In other countries, there are also requirements on how many fish one yacht or somebody could catch, but not in the case of Hong Kong. So there should be some requirements in this regard in Hong Kong. That should be a policy devised to help the fisheries industry, to help them restore the level of catch. And there should also be regulation. And thirdly, a licensing system. How many licenses should be issued to regulate the industry? I don't want you to answer each and every question of mine, but tell me whether you're going to develop a comprehensive policy to help fishermen and the fisheries industry as a whole. Mr. Sham? Well, Mr. Sham, in fact, I have raised these questions for 20 years. Now, like I said, we have the Committee for the Sustainable Development of the Fisheries Industry. It has released a report on initiatives to promote the sustainable development of the industry. And some initiatives are rather long-term. Mr. Chan mentioned specific measures, regulatory measures, for example, the eyelets of nets and the size of nets. And sometimes these measures are hard to implement, as the livelihood of fishermen and the level of catch may be affected. We need to have a detailed discussion with the industry. It's not a matter of whether the government is taking ahead, proceeding with it or not. Fishermen across the world are facing changes. For the long-term development of the industry, we need to have some policies and proper management. Do you know that the fishermen catch fries with large nets, and then they just crush the fries and have it sold at $1 per catty for the feeding of larger fish without any control? The government spends tens of millions of dollars to nurture fries in the sea, and then eventually the fries are caught and fed to larger fish, and they're sold at just $1 per catty. You should draw reference from other jurisdictions. Don't just tell us you conduct studies and you just shelved any plan due to objection. You have really done so much damage to the fisheries industry. Can you now do something good? The question is do something good to help the fisheries industry, in particular the policy to help nearshore fishing. Why don't you just change your name and tell us you're going to damage the industry? About the types of agricultural activities, tell us how many have dwindled. Pig farmers, other agricultural activities, etc., fishermen's livelihood. It's been 20 years. Wake up. Well, I'm not saying that this is the responsibility of any government official here, but the whole government is stifling the fisheries industry. You are destroying your traditional industry. Yes, Mr. Chan's views have been heard loud and clear, but let's be fair. For AFCD, in 2012, we implemented a trawling ban, which is a very effective way in restoring fisheries resources. So the AFCD has really made some progress in this regard. Madam Chair, after the meeting, please ask the department to provide the following: the decline in the number of fishermen and fishing boats, so that the public would know what the AFCD has actually done. We have 15 minutes more. There's only one item for this meeting. I have 4 members waiting in line for the first round. We need to, I need to impose a speaking time limit. I didn't impose any limit in the first round, but in order to give a chance for each member to ask questions, I will impose a time limit 10 minutes. Mr. Charles Mock. Madam Chair, I'd like to give some opportunities for various government departments to explain to us what you have done in relation to this issue. Now, on the lane of submarine cables, what is the impact on the marine environment and the livelihood of fishermen? Now, I'd like to ask Mr. Chan from OFCA to tell us something about it. For example, what are the sites where cables are laid, and what are the landing points? What are the landing points? Tell us at the moment. And what is the nature of the works, the impact, the frequency, the number, how frequent is it, and what is the actual impact on the marine ecology? In fact, on the contrary, sometimes we hear submarine cables being damaged by fishing boats. If so, repairs are needed and more damage will be done to the marine ecology. So, is it does it happen a lot to shore and landing points and submarine cables? Mr. Chan, can you tell us whether, in fact, the situation is serious or not? Mr. Chan, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Member, for the question. We have altogether 9 submarine cables or optic fiber cables in operation. In 2006, we had 7, and since then we have had 2 more, and one company is applying to install a new system, which will become the 10th system, and another company has shown interest, and it will implement the system in the next 2 years. By 2016, altogether, there will be 11 optic fiber cable systems in Hong Kong. And there are various landing points, 2 stations in Tong Fok of Lantau, in Chung Ham Kok, in Cheung Kwan O. This is a major landing point for submarine cables. In 2006, due to a major earthquake in Taiwan, marine sediments rushed to that part of Hong Kong, and causing damage to submarine cables. As a result, the operators then adopted a different design and realigned the submarine cables to ensure sustainable operation of the system. And over the years, because of different alignments, dangerous zones have been avoided. Now, in processing applications, the OFCA plays the liaison role. For example, any company interested in laying submarine cables would contact OFCA, and we will contact the various departments, and we will also notify the applicants of the necessary procedures and approvals to be sought. For example, whether EIA has to be conducted, whether any works on land will be involved, and whether approval from Highways Department is required. So that we let the companies know how to avoid potentially dangerous zones, such as some marine areas that have to be protected. For example, recently, for the laying of cables in Cheng Kwan O, it has also dodged a protected zone, and for another cable recently laid in Cape d'Aglia, again, it has dodged a spot to protect marine ecology. So the first thing is to avoid as much as possible protected areas, and if this is inevitable, applications will be required for various departments. For example, according to the various requirements under the ordinance, it has to meet the various requirements under the foreshore and seabed reclamations ordinance. So they will have to apply with the Lands Department, and also an EIA will have to be applied for with the EPD.
And the environmental impacts must be minimized for such projects. At the same time, they must maintain communications with the fishermen. If the fishermen are affected by the laying of the submarine cables, they must negotiate and provide compensation to the fishermen. I understand because of time limits. I have another question for Mr. Chen. Do we have a lot of cases of submarine cables being damaged by vessels in recent years? In the last 2 years, we had only 2 such cases. The figure wasn't high, but a lot of time was required to repair the cables. And the proponents had to apply for different approvals, and the application time was relatively long. And for those cases, it took almost three months to repair all these cables, because it took time to obtain approvals from different departments. And we disseminated information to the cable providers, and we issued guidelines so that they can expedite the repair process in such cases. Were fishermen affected by these incidents? Have you received any complaints from fishermen? Just now, you mentioned that EIAs were required for many projects. Did you see a lot of incidents recently, or were these projects relatively low damage? If fishermen were impacted, are you aware of such incidents or cases? I've been told by some fishermen that when submarine cables are laid out, there is the structures might need to be built above water level, and the fishing vessels or the small fish cannot pass through. So later on, as far as I know, you changed your method of laying submarine cables. So does the AFCD have any additional information to share? Mr. Choi? For submarine cables, for optical cables, there is no structure involved above the water level, and we just need to perform plowing at the seabed, and we just have to plant the cables underwater. And the environmental impacts are relatively less for this method. We're not aware of any fishermen complaints or ecological impacts. These cables might affect marine life and underwater plants. We also have to see whether the routes of the projects of the cables would affect the fishermen's work. Can you avoid the fishing areas when you lay the cables? Perhaps I would add one point. Since we have a trawling ban already in Hong Kong, and laying the submarine cables would only affect the trawling. Without trawling, other types of fishing activities would not be affected by submarine cables, as far as I know. If you have a specific question, 10 minutes should be enough. Mr. Kenneth Leung, I have 3 questions. I would try to be brief. On the 25th of April, I sent a letter to the chairman, which is LC paper number CB*11320/13214/01, and I was concerned with the waste generated by the Hong Kong boundary crossing facilities island, and whether these wastes have spread to other areas or islands, and have any filters been set up to mitigate the impacts. Mr. Al didn't seem to he hasn't said anything on the impacts of the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macao Bridge. Can you specifically respond to the questions I raised in my letter? Mr. Chan from the Highways Department. For the Hong Kong Boundary Crossing Facilities Island of the ZH Bridge, the project was already gazetted, and we obtained approval to begin land reclamation, and construction has begun. And we can only work in an area approved by the Marine Department. And for our work vessels or temporary measures, we followed the requirements of the Marine Department. So we are working according to the statutory requirements. And the affected area seems to be very large. Why? Can you explain why this is the case? we should look at the issue from two areas. And the project was gazetted according to the Foreshore and Seabed Reclamations Ordinance. And we have a lot of working vessels, and that's why we introduced some temporary mitigation measures. And we worked according to the scope allowed by the Marine Department. And for the anti-slit filters, we introduced such measures in that area. So the mitigation measures were out of the area stipulated by the Marine Department. You introduce facilities outside the approved area, so is that a violation? The scope of the artificial island cannot exceed the area stipulated by the Foreshore and Seabed Reclamations Ordinance, and we haven't violated the ordinance. The roads we pave must satisfy the requirements of the Highway Department, and we also have to satisfy requirements from the Transport Department. And for the slit filters, they are all in accordance with the ordinance. And the number of vessels is dropping. A lot of vessels have already left the area. Apart from the vessels, I'm also concerned with the temporary facilities. This is my main concern. And for the third runway project EIA report, I would like to address a few points. For the marine species affected, and in the administrative brief in points 5.10.3.3, and the birds, it mentioned that birds would be affected. Under 5.6.3, Chinese white dolphins might also be moderately affected. And a few days ago at the panel on economic development, these have been mentioned. For the EIA report for the third runway, we have already seen that these marine species could be moderately affected, and the government is saying that will build a marine park spanning 2,400 hectares at the Brothers. But at that time, we might not see any marine species. That might just be a sea. Why don't you build a marine park before the project? That said, a marine park might introduce fresh limitations and increase the cost of your projects. But if these limitations mean that the marine ecology can be improved, why don't you build a marine park before you begin your project? It might help to reassure the public. Have you considered this proposal? Please answer this question. Perhaps the Airport Authority Hong Kong can answer this question. Mr. Lee, please. And on the third runway EIA reports, it has been mentioned in our administrative reports. There is the conclusion of moderate impacts to the marine species on the premise that the mitigations measures have not been introduced, and we have certain limitations. The construction cannot take place at night to minimize the impact to birds, and we want to reduce noise nuisance in order to protect the birds. And for the introduction of a marine park, it's a long-term mitigation measure. And in response to the construction period, we have other mitigation measures. And for the foreshore projects, and once the construction begins, we would reroute the ferries at Sky Pier in order to avoid to reroute those ferries. I see all these points. That's not what I want the airport authority to answer. I think the airport authority has no power with the marine park. My question was, why don't we build a marine park before we start constructions at the runway? So we can allow time for the fish to go away. The Chinese white dolphins won't. They won't be able to find another place to stay by themselves. For the marine park, it's located in the central area of the runway project, and according to the experts, the Chinese white dolphins have a large span a large area, and naturally they would avoid high disturbance areas, and this is the opinion from our experts. And when the areas have improved, the dolphins would return to their original sites.
Destination.
So where will the dolphins go? Where can they go? You need to build a marine park first, otherwise they have nowhere to go. You need experts to find out where these dolphins can go. Even if you set up a temporary marine park or whatever, you need to create the conservation area so that these dolphins have a place to go. This is more important. Now, the airport authority should also help us. After the EIA report has been released, no paper has been forwarded to the EA panel. I don't know whether you've submitted this report to the Economic Development panel. Please also give us a report. Give this panel a report. Mr. Wu Chi-wai is here. So next, Mr. Wu Chi-wai, as he is present now. Thank you, Madam Chair. 2 parts. Now, many say that many reports contain much detailed. However, in terms of monitoring, the work is sloppy. So there is a question mark on the government's ability to monitor the projects. Now, as said just now, you talk about the temporary facilities, but if you look at the plan in the Gazette, it defines the scope of the works. Now, of course, it's 160 hectares where works will be carried out. The question is, outside these 160 hectares, it seems that no works must be carried out there. So, the administration says that these are temporary facilities, and once the works are done, they will be removed. But the public is not convinced. And on the various mitigation measures to improve the ecology, how is the administration going to monitor the implementation of these mitigation measures? Can you tell us the specifics? Will there be frequent inspections? Failing to do so, will any government official be accountable? Also, if we proceed with the 3rd runway project, there will be reclamation, and definitely the Chinese white dolphins habitat will be affected. The other important habitat for Chinese white dolphins is the southwest of Lantau, where there is conservation area. It's just off Tai Po. It's very important. It was in 2002, after it being endorsed by EXCO, after passing through LegCo, and after going through public consultation, the recommendation was still not implemented. The marine park was endorsed or approved in 2002, and due to various reasons, it has yet to be implemented. How can you convince the public that after reclaiming land, after building the artificial island, the marine area, the marine park spanning 2,400 natural nautical miles can be built? That was a very important conservation area for Chinese white dolphins in the southwestern part of Lantau. You should make it a marine park so that the Chinese white dolphins can settle in this habitat, which settle in the park, which and build their habitat which is suitable for them. And you have no marine park before the works, and after the works, those Chinese white dolphins might have died already. So the EIA report doesn't address the problems. You try to reassure the public by suggesting mitigation measures, but you can't even protect the important species, the Chinese white dolphin. The other important point is why back in 2002, the proposal to build a marine park in the southwestern part of Lantau was already endorsed by the Sea Council, and yet it has yet to be implemented. Mr. Au. In fact, in 2009, on this marine park proposal, the government consulted the fisheries associations and also the rural area committees in the affected areas, including Lantau, and on restricting the vessel speed. The rural area committees have had expressed concerns. And the AFCD, therefore, had to try to address matters of their concern. At the same time, we carried on with remaining work. We needed to collect data and conduct survey before coming back to discuss with the stakeholders. Now, on the setting up a marine park near the Brothers, as you may recall, the government has undertaken to implement this mitigation measure and accorded priority to this project. On the boundary setting and the coastline, studies have been conducted. The government has also started discussions with the fisheries industry, and the Brothers are actually close to the north side of Lantau, and we expect to have it gazetted in the middle of next year in mid-2015. So the government will continue its effort in setting a marine park. I think the administration's answer is very clear. Even a finalized proposal cannot be implemented. What about other ideas? In 2002, the proposal had LegCo's approval and Sea Council's endorsement, and yet the proposal was not implemented. You're talking about a larger area, 2,400 200 square kilometers for the marine park. My question is, how are you going to actually build it? By then, fish and catch will be a problem. Vessel speed limitation will be a problem. It means these mitigation measures cannot be implemented. If these cannot be implemented, it means the Chinese white dolphins cannot be protected. Madam Chair, our work in hand is to deal with the suggestion of establishing a marine park at the Brothers, and we're discussing with the fishermen. Now, Madam Chair, the Brothers is within the work site, so even when works commence, even if there is a marine park at the Brothers, you can't save the dolphins. According to my limited knowledge, the waters off Taiao in the southwestern part of Lantau is a very active area for our Chinese white dolphins. The proposal had been finalized for a marine park to be built there, and yet you didn't implement it. You said that you should build the third runway first before setting up a new marine park. So even the old proposal hasn't been implemented, and you now float some new ideas. Who will be responsible? Madam Chair, as I said, we accord priorities. My question is, why not Southwest Lantau? The EIA ordinance and the environmental permits imposes a condition for the marine park to be built at the Brothers. We have that's why we have accorded priority to that. We are not giving up the southwestern part of Lantau. We will continue our work in this regard. Well, Madam Chair, I'm sorry, may I ask, when are you going to do it? Starting from 2009, it's been 5 years. Any progress in your discussion, or not much progress? Well, we just follow the policy established by the Policy Bureau, and we have colleagues conducting daily inspections at the sites mentioned. That is the Western Lantau near Sokou. And we continue to closely monitor and inspect the place. I'm asking about the timetable and the progress. Based on the views received on the marine park at the southwestern part of Lantau, we are working on it. In the middle of next year, we're going to gazette the marine park at the Brothers, and then the statutory procedures can commence. Now, colleagues, it's okay to give your comment to the technocrats responsible for the project. But the point is, if you're just giving a comment and not asking a question, they can't really answer you. So if you ask for specific information, timetable, etc., you can help us in following up the issue. Now, in fact, I have housekeeping matters to attend to. Mr. Stephen Ho has moved a motion, and Mr. Ho and also I myself have questions to ask in the first round, and I also have 3 members waiting to ask questions in the second round: Elizabeth Quat, Christopher Chung, and Kenneth Leung. So I'll impose a time limit, 3 minutes for the first round and 2 minutes for the second round, because we need time to deal with Mr. Ho's motion. Mr. Ho, I haven't even spoken in the first round, so can I first line up for the second round? I'm sorry, but that really is the situation. Even at other panel meetings, you can't queue up in advance for the first, second, or third round. So come earlier next time. Mr. Ho, I'm sorry, I have to say in advance that we need to slightly extend this meeting, or I won't be able to deal with your motion. I'll give you back 10 seconds. Now, a lot has been said about the problems with the fisheries industry, but it's not clear how what is the government's policy on the fisheries industry. Now, we always talk about fisheries resources. What about actual operation? Mr. Charles Mok talked about not Dr. Kenneth Leung, but Mr. Charles Mok. He talked about laying submarine cables. And the cables are laying 1 or 2 meters below the seabed. The impact may not be great, but as far as the sludge or silt is concerned, it imposes a great impact. We're against the. I mean, back in 1997, when the Legislative Airport was built, when Disneyland was built, these problems were ignored, and as a result, fishing resources dwindled. That was the responsibility of the government. I was not a legislative member. I couldn't criticize them here, but I see no mitigation measures being effectively implemented. And many say that the marine park should be provided as soon as possible. I mean, fishermen have no objection to the marine park, but they have other objections. Say, when the third runway proposal was out, it was suggested that 2,400 hectares of marine park be built, but only some fishermen could, some licensed fishermen could enter and practice fishing. However, this practice is not, this license is not transferable, meaning that my son will not be able to get my license after I'm deceased to practice fishing there. So the government's understanding is such that there is actually no mitigation measure. I must move this motion as a result, because we need to strike a balance between protecting the fisheries resources and the sustainable development of this fisheries industry. You should not make the you should not polarize these two matters. We must not give way. On the other hand, I must tell you, Mr. Christopher Chung is particularly concerned about dredging and dumping. Silt dredged at sea should be handled at sea. It should not, and on site, it should not be dumped elsewhere, or you will be damaging the environment 2 times. Well, you can protect the Chinese white dolphins, but what about the impact on fairways?
Hong Kong has a lot of vessels every day. How do you assess air quality impacts? So what's your take on marine park policy? Under the Marine Park Ordinance, the purpose is to maintain a balance. And we strive to protect marine resources and marine ecology. And we do have requirements in marine parks on the speeds of vessels and the licensing mechanism. The purpose of marine parks is to protect marine resources. So with regards to your suggestion, we can think about how we can come up with a compromise. So we have to balance the interests. On the inheritance and transfer of licenses, can you respond? Mr. Sham, as Mr. Au said, the spirit of the Marine Parks Ordinance is to control or gradually reduce the number of fishing licenses through marine parks. That's the objective of the ordinance. And under this background, it has been made very clear in the ordinance that generally you cannot fish in marine parks unless approval is obtained from the AFCD. And for fishing licenses in marine parks, we have a working group and the working group would monitor the procedures in granting the fishing licenses. And this working group consists of representatives from the fishing trade as well as other people from the community. And for Mr. Ho's questions, we have indeed talked with Mr. Ho, and the government is aware of these views, and the department is happy to hold further discussions. Can you explain why the licenses cannot be inherited? He talked about the issue of licenses, which I have no problems with. But the real issue is that these licenses cannot be inherited. 30 years later, where can the fishermen in Hong Kong go to get their fish if they only have 1 square kilometer? Is that adequate? This is something I would scrutinize you on later on in the Legislative Council. Why can't you allow the fishermen to inherit the licenses? The licenses are attached to a specific vessel and a specific owner. The vessel must be owned by the a specific person or a designated person before we can issue a license. I'm referring to the succession of licenses, not the issuing of licenses. It's similar to hawker licenses, right? A member mentioned the decreasing number of vessels, fishing vessels. You're saying that you are allowing the fishing trade to die down naturally. You are the one creating the conflicts. You are the one responsible for the demise of the fisheries trade in Hong Kong. Under the existing ordinance, real fishermen can apply for licenses. Let's say if the father decides to quit, his son can. If his son wants to take over, we would consider such cases on a discretionary basis. How many such cases have occurred in the past? You have to provide figures, and can the government provide relevant figures with us on the issuing of new licenses in the past years, or the succession of licenses? Please let him answer this question first. Mr. Sham, when marine parks were first introduced, we had around 800 to 1,000 licenses issued to real fishermen who want to catch fish in marine parks. And after all these years, a lot of fishing vessels no longer operate in these marine parks. And in the renewal process, since these vessels don't have to operate in these areas anymore, licenses weren't renewed. And we have about 300 now, which is 700 less than before. And the number of licenses would only continue to decrease. And if the fishing areas continue to shrink, the licenses might not be renewed. That's your logic. Those who didn't get their licenses renewed simply don't operate in the area anymore, and they have stopped renewing their licenses for 8 or even 10 years. So if they no longer have to fish in that area, what's the point of issuing new licenses? You're still talking about the new licenses. Can you provide the figures? The number of rejected applications and the reasons for the rejections. Of course, if the fishermen don't come and apply for the licenses, there's no reason to renew. their licenses, but for people who would like to renew their licenses, how many cases of approval or rejection have there been? So this is, I think this is fair to everyone. For the projects mentioned, I believe there are 7 projects to the west of Hong Kong: the incinerators, artificial island, Long Kutan, Siu Ho Wan, etc. Can the administration provide more information, including the timelines or construction timelines? And can you provide information on the affected areas for these projects? Can you specify the affected water bodies and affected areas, especially the water bodies to the west of Hong Kong, so we can better understand the cumulative environmental impacts to the fisheries and marine ecology? We should look at the western water bodies holistically. And the marine parks are a response to the different construction projects. So I hope you also include the construction schedules of the marine parks, as well as the impacts to the brothers areas. So we'd like to know the areas which could be damaged by the projects, and what does the recovery schedule look like, and the mitigation measures. Each project is unique. If site investigation is involved for the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macao Bridge, what impacts would it bring? So what mitigation measures would you introduce for different projects, and the level of impacts? Third, recovery. Some members mentioned tracking. You should follow up on the projects. For example, the Hong Kong International Airport and Hong Kong Disneyland. Did you track the progress of their recovery works afterwards? And in the future, what kind of recovery approaches would you adopt? You just mentioned marine parks, but you have 2 approaches. One is passive, limiting the vessel speeds, etc. Can you be more proactive and introduce more proactive mitigation measures to recover the affected areas? I believe this is something we all want to hear. So can the relevant departments submit the information via the relevant bureau? In the next 5 or 7 years, we need a picture of the construction projects. The second round of questions, 2 minutes each. Ms. Elizabeth Quad. I want to follow up on the administration's view that they have invested a lot of resources on public education with regards to conservation of marine ecology. I've held a lot of talks at different schools, and for primary and secondary school students, a lot of them have very limited understanding of Hong Kong's marine ecology, and they have little opportunities to understand Hong Kong's nature. So I don't understand that. I don't agree with the view that the government has done a lot in public education. I think we have to do more. Yesterday, I went to a school and I asked whether students know that Hong Kong has sea turtles. And do they know about the state of Napoleon wrasse in Hong Kong? Most of them have no idea at all. They don't even know that Hong Kong has green turtles, green sea turtles. So the government should do much more to educate the public. I agree that we have to do a lot more. The AFC has already done a lot, but I agree that we have to do a lot more. When we devise our biodiversity strategies, I think the AFC has done a lot. Maybe Mr. Sham can explain more. We've always been promoting biodiversity, but our resources are limited, so we cannot do too much. Every year, we have a lot of different efforts. For example, ecotourism, public lectures, beach cleaning operations, school talks, and roving exhibitions. And we also share exhibition materials with secondary and primary schools, and we provide such resources for exhibitions in schools. Chairman, I just want to say that this is far from enough. In terms of public and school education, the government should do a lot more. So don't just repeat what you have already been doing. Mr. Christopher Chung, I want to point out one thing. Since the trawling ban was in place last year, the government or the FCD has been unable to enforce the law. There's a lot of illegal trawling going on by local and mainland vessels, and some mainland operators are using local vessels to carry out illegal trawling. There's nothing we can do because the mainland is involved. By the time the mainland authorities come, the vessels have already gone. I think you have to devise a law. You have to think of a solution by increasing manpower or enhancing the equipment to tackle this problem.
Perhaps you should also gear up because it could be dangerous when vessels collide. Secondly, now after the trawling ban, now you can just keep data using the baseline year of 1 year, because you don't allow people to take heroin, but you take heroin. There are different ways to conducting the survey. I also have a motion. I hope that they could explain to us before the motion. Some 20 seconds left. Anyone taking Mr. Zhong's question?
李小姐嚇，我想
Ms. Lee? On enforcement. After imposing the trawling ban, we indeed received complaints from some fishermen, and we actively followed up on the complaints with the marine police and the mainland counterpart, and we have joint operations with them. We would like to strive for more resources to step up enforcement, to increase manpower, and to enhance our gear. As for the study, we adopted the trawling ban or the trawling method as the subject of a study because this is a common method for fishing operations, and it's been practiced for a long time, and research fishing permit can be applied for trawling purpose. The time allowed and the scope is limited under this permit. It will not have any adverse impact on the marine ecology. No, but the point is many fishermen complain that this is actually destructive. Sorry, you're out of time. Dr. Kenneth Leung, I'd like to follow up on the marine ecology as well. A specific question on the green sea turtles in Lamalai, on Lamalai Island. Now, just now, they said that you can go online and see the latest habitat and information of green sea turtles. In fact, they're active areas have been diminishing, and the number of eggs laid have also diminished in recent years. I'd like to have a paper on the latest situation concerning green sea turtles and what the government has done to maintain a healthy development of the green sea turtle habitat. Can you give us a paper, Mr. Sham? Ms. Lee? Maybe my colleague Mr. Chan can supplement on the issue of green sea turtles. Something about green sea turtles. In fact, for the Deep Bay on Island, this is a protected area for green sea turtles. During mating seasons, people are not allowed to enter the zone. And we have continued to monitor the laying of eggs on the seashore by green sea turtles. They don't come back every year, even for an adult green sea turtle, male green sea turtle. They come back once every few years, and the habitat is quite small. The beach, in fact, is quite small. They may not come back every year. And according to our record, a few years ago, they came back to lay eggs. And it's now in June, and the mating season has begun, and we have begun our monitoring efforts. Can you give us something more specific, what we can do to protect this Deep Bay area? And also, do you have any tracking studies for these turtles that come back every year, whether the number is on the rise or on the decline? Madam Chair, we have constant monitoring. We know the annual spawning and coming back. They're coming back every year, and we also have satellite tracking system. We know where they are. We also have measures to protect them. We can give you some information. Yes, please do. Let's deal with the two motions. The first one is moved by Mr. Stephen Ho and Mr. Christopher Zhong. I mean, they have respectively moved two motions. Now, I'm going to extend the meeting to 10:45. So I'd like to seek your views, members. Do you wish to speak on the motion? No need, because if they still don't understand after I've spoken so much, movers, do you need to explain your motion? If not, so please read out your motion, and this will put to a vote. The administration is urged to review the Marine Parks Ordinance to balance environmental protection and sustainable development of the fisheries industries. In the future, marine works, the marine sludge should be banned from being used as a fuel to protect the seabed, and to terminate any new public dumping at sea projects. Seconded by Mr. Zhong. Those in favor, please raise your hand. 6 votes, nobody against. So the motion is carried. Mr. Christopher Zhong, the second motion, urging the AFCD to increase manpower to tackle, to step up enforcement action against illegal trawling bans, and to stop any trawling ban activities to damage the seabed. Those in favor, please raise your hand. 6 votes, nobody against. The motion is also carried. Nothing under AOB. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you. Thank you, representative from the administration.